it's it's like the class is like hold your arm out. It's like, oh, that's easy.
Yeah.
And then it's like, nope, it's not. It's not so easy.
This is going to make no sense for anybody tuning in right now without the sound on. It's just three dudes scooting around in their chairs. Okay, I think we're live right now. Hello, everyone. This is Close to the Metal. This is our weekly computing podcast where we go in depth talking about different aspects of computing, usually a specific product that's coming out or whatever else is happening in the news. Today, we're going to be talking about Intel's Optane Memory, and we're going to go in depth with that. But we're also broadcasting live on Facebook and YouTube, so we want to see your questions, your comments, whatever you have to say. We would love to see it in there, and make sure you get those in there. Questions, I'll answer them and feed them over to these guys. I'm Greg Nibbler. Let's introduce our panel to the right.
I'm Brad Burke.
Brad Burke. And on the end, it is Matt Smith. All right, guys. So besides our dancing moves, which have clearly impressed everybody, let's talk about this. So Intel's Optane Memory. We've known about this for a couple of years, right? They've been kind of teasing that they have this new system coming out. Maybe just to start off with, because it is a little bit confusing as far as what Optane actually is. Do we have any kind of a definition as far as that before we go into this specific product? Okay, that was Matt's answer. All right, that was Matt Smith right there, computing editor.
Well,
it's going to be a tough show.
Intel could tell you, but then they would have to kill you.
So are they just keeping this actually how it works, just pretty much proprietary information? They're not telling you how this works.
Right. So, it sort of is a technology, and it was originally introduced as X-Point that fits between sort of these flash-based, faster, NAND-based flash storage options and mechanical hard drives, spinning disk hard drives. And the actual X-Point, what it is and how it works is the part that they're sort of...
They go kill some unicorns, and then they take their horns and layer them. They've been really not transparent about the underlying technology, which is both, the sort of thing that's understandable and also is going to make a lot of nerds mad. Because, you
want to know how it works.
Yeah, we want to know how it works. And, we don't want to know the specifics, and we want to get a lot of, die shots and really detailed information. But this is something that's all new, and Intel's very protective of it, so they're not really saying a whole lot. And also this is a trend with Intel lately because they just killed off the Intel developer forum. So that maybe tells you that right now Intel's not particularly interested in distributing,
their information,
in-depth technical information.
They're like the one company that's not having developer forum now, because pretty much everybody's got.
Yeah, no kidding. Next month is going to be the month of the developer forums. We've got Apple and Nvidia and Microsoft at the beginning of the month. But anyway, what you really need to know about Optane from sort of an architecture level is that it's not Flash, and that's what I think people don't have a hard time understanding.
Right.
It's not.
It's something new.
It's not a new kind of flash memory. It's a new sort of memory that has a different underlying technology behind it. And so that, in theory, it can be really, 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 really quick in ways that Flash can't.
Yeah, I guess as far as then, since we're not going to know about the underlying specifics of how it works, but it is a new kind of memory. It's not Flash, like you said. It's not something we've seen before. But it ostensibly, it's very, very fast. And that's the key.
So fast.
Yeah. So fast.
Really fast.
Really fast.
The fastest.
Yeah.
And it's non-volatile, too. So like any other kind of drive, rather than memory, which you lose when you shut it off. When you shut off the power to this, it still retains everything that's on it, all the data that's on it.
So, non-volatile, so it doesn't explode randomly.
That's good. Yeah.
It's actually one of my favorite tech terms is volatile and non-volatile.
All right, so this is non-volatile.
Very good imagery behind it.
All right. It's not going to explode, in theory, as far as we know. Okay, so that's the Optane technology. That's the line. That's what they're talking about, and they're trying to use this to revolutionize a lot of different things. But using this Optane technology, today, we're talking specifically about the Intel Optane Memory because they have the full-on drives available, but they're very expensive. Right?
They just have one model available currently, and it's an enterprise drive It's not meant for people to put in their PCs and play games off of or anything like that. Yeah, it runs like $1,500 for a 375 gigabyte version. But it can actually, and its sort of deal is that it can act as memory for a server.
Okay.
So it actually will act as, in a way, it'll sort of stand in for RAM.
So that's the server side.
Right.
That they do have that available. But now they've got something for ordinary consumers that has come out, and that's the Intel Optane Memory. And Matt just did a review of they've got two different versions, right? A 16 gig and a 32 gig.
Yeah.
So those are the two different versions are out, but you just did the review on that. So what is this? What is this consumer level version?
Well, it's a cache drive.
Okay.
So, I thought Ars Technica had a really good headline about this when the drive came out, which was Intel Optane Memory: How to Make Revolutionary Technology Totally Boring, and which is a little harsh, but also I think fair because a cache drive is not something that is going to make most people go, "Oh, really? Tell me more."
Right. Yeah. It's not as exciting, splashy.
It's like if you told someone like it's a new hard drive, I think most people would be like, at least like, "Oh, yeah, hard drive." But if you tell them it's a cache drive, it's going to be like, "What?
Yeah.
What?"
And it is kind of confusing. Like,
does that mean it's expensive? Like, I don't understand.
Yeah. What's a cache drive? I've never purchased a cache drive before.
So, and Brad gives us a sigh.
Right.
So yeah, what it is basically is it's a drive where it basically is like in between RAM and an actual hard drive. It's a drive where information can be sent and stored. We think, what is a cache? It's like maybe you have a cache of logs behind your cabin.
Right.
Well, that's where you go get the logs. Well, here you go. You have your cache drive, and that's where you go get your data when you need it quickly. And so it intelligently picks up data that's being used and stores it, so you can go, around behind your cabin and pick it up real quick, rather than having to go all the way out to the shed, which is your hard drive. Okay. And get it that way. And this kind of like a cache is like a really common thing. Like processors have them. Mm-hmm. Hard drives, including mechanical disks, have them. But they're generally pretty small. Yeah. They'll be on the order of megabytes. But these are a 16 gigabyte, 32 gigabyte drive. So obviously,
that's a lot.
You can store a lot more data on there.
And like you're saying, this is something that like Intel kind of talked about when they first introduced this, is that all memory and storage on a system is sort of on a scale where the closer you get to the actual process and the faster you can hand off that data, the more expensive it becomes to use higher sizes. So you get things like Intel chips have like 6 megabytes of cache on them, and then you get RAM where you get 8 or 16 gigs of RAM, and that's faster, but you lose it whenever you lose power. And then on the other end, you've got your hard drive. And so it's sort of about filling out these spots in between where we can say an SSD was faster than a hard drive, and that's easier, but it's more again, you're paying more for a higher capacity at a lot faster rate. Mm-hmm. And this is something where you can again sneak in the middle of that and say, well, we've got something even faster, but it's $77 for 32 gigs. It's a lot. Yeah. So we're kind of continually working our way to like fill out this sort of spectrum of storage and memory. And this is starting to really, especially in the enterprise level, bring them very close together.
Okay, so we have all these different systems that have been where the memory is stored, and this smooths out that process, getting rid of like kind of the backlogs or the spots where it gets stuck. Essentially, we're trying to funnel all this information.
Yeah, with that much data storage capacity, you can store all kinds of things. You can store like most of your operating system information, most information about it, all the information about a game that you would need, it's a lot of storage for a cache, that have 16 or 32 gigabytes.
So a lot of that lag that you have when you're normally using a computer, like stuff is loading up really slow, this would have that right there. So boom, it loads up right away.
It could, yeah.
Okay, it could in theory. Okay, so that's what a cache drive is, and that's what this Intel Optane Memory drive is. Drive wouldn't be the right word.
No, this is Optane Memory. It's
Optane
just,
Memory. So it's just a memory.
I mean, It's marketing terms, really.
Yeah.
I mean, it's basically drive technology, but they're marketing it as memory because it's not something you're going to install your operating system on.
Okay. All right.
So.
And taking a look here at the comments as they're coming in, and I am seeing some come in. Drew says cache drive plus SSD equals 88 miles per hour. So we've got that. Nobody Back to the Future.
Yeah,
apparently didn't. I liked it, Drew. So
yes, it's
please
great.
Keep those.
It just took me a second.
All right, but yeah, we do have some questions coming in, so I'll make sure we get to these as we go through. But I wanted to talk a little bit more about this. So you just did the review. We got a 16 and a 32 gig, and you started testing these out. And
yeah, we only got the 32 gig for testing.
We only got the 32 gig for testing. Okay, so what can you tell us about this? Because you used it with a hard drive, with a standard hard drive, or with a solid state drive?
With a hard drive.
With a standard hard drive. Okay.
So we used it with a Western Digital black 1 terabyte, which is that's like the respectable hard drive.
Terabyte, yeah.
And it's the Western Digital Black series. It's that's a nice hard drive. Yeah. It's good performance, good value. Mm-hmm. So I feel like it's a pretty good. That's what Intel sent with the Optane memory, and I felt like that was a pretty good thing for them to send. If they would have sent something that was like a blue drive or something, it would have been well, maybe you're kind of trying to skew the numbers a little bit here, but
right.
But they sent the black, so that was nice. So as far as the performance goes, what we found was that it does have a pretty big impact on your day-to-day use. So if you're booting up your system for the first time, so the test rig we had was a Core i5 processor. I think it was 7400. It's 16 gigs of RAM, and then of course you had the Optane memory and the 1 terabyte hard drive. So with the memory enabled, the Optane memory enabled, the system booted up from pressing the button to a fully operational desktop in about 14 seconds.
Wow. And okay, that is pretty impressive.
If you did it with just the hard drive, it took about 32 seconds.
Okay.
So a little less than half the time
with
the Optane memory. Perhaps the biggest gap in terms of the numbers was when we launched Chrome for the first time on the system. Launching it for the first time with the Optane memory took 37 milliseconds.
Okay.
To open it. So that's basically blink of an eye.
Right. It's on.
You press it, it's on. With the hard drive alone, it took about 2.2 seconds.
Okay. So that's definitely an improvement.
Which is 2,265 milliseconds.
Yeah.
So that's 30. Would you like 37 milliseconds or 2,265 milliseconds?
Yeah.
I think it's pretty obvious which one we would take. And that's, 2 seconds doesn't sound like a lot, but that's the kind of thing where when you're actually using a device, if you wait that long, you find yourself being is it working? Did it freeze? We're just used to things responding instantly these days because we're very pampered.
Yeah, and if it's slow, if it's a second longer, I'm going to get really mad about it and then throw something.
Yeah. So, I mean, in these sort of situations, it definitely makes a difference. It's worth noting that, two things are worth noting. First, these differences were most pronounced when you're doing something the first time.
Okay.
Which is interesting for two reasons. One is, this is a cache drive, so some people might think that it's only going to speed things up after you do something, but that's not how things have worked with cache drives for a while. They're very smart, so they still go and get data very aggressively and very intelligently to make sure that something is ready to go the first time that you open it.
Okay.
The second thing, though, is that after you start doing things several times, the difference between the hard drive and the Optane memory is actually pretty much negligible. So on the third, if you're doing your third boot run, then both the Optane memory and the hard drive by itself booted in the exact same amount of time. On that run, it was 16 seconds.
That's weird because you would think that it's got it's already cached, so it would just go fast. Why is it going slower as you go through this?
Well, it's not that the memory is really going slower. I mean, that 2 second difference is kind of a testing margin of error sort of difference. But it's that you already have a cache actually on your hard drive.
Mm-hmm.
even a mechanical spinning disk. The Western Digital Black 1 terabyte has a 64 megabyte cache, if I remember right.
Yeah.
And also RAM is there. So in a variety of situations, it's being very aggressive about how it stores data. In fact, this is something that famously a lot of geeks were mad about for a while, because when Windows Vista came around, it was reporting that was using all this memory. And people were mad about that because it'd be always using all of your memory. I have a system with 16 gigabytes, and I would open it up and it'll be I'm using 12 gigabytes of memory. And it'll be oh, Windows is horrible. It doesn't know how to use memory, blah, blah, blah. But in fact, Windows is doing a very good job because it is storing all the things that you need so that you have it there when you click on the thing. So that, can negate some of the advantages. But I will say that in actual, not instrumented use, the Optane drive does feel a lot quicker in a variety of scenarios, particularly in that, scenario that we all know and love where we boot up our computer, and if you have a hard drive computer, you hate it.
Yeah.
Because it takes 5 minutes for anything to feel responsive.
Exactly.
And with Optane, that's not a problem.
And this is something you could buy, and that would actually help that out. Yeah. It would speed it up. Brad, what do you think about
Well, sort of.
Okay, this is where I knew there was going to be a sort of or a but in this situation.
So I think that kind of brings us to the idea of who can actually use this, because it's an M2 drive, so you've got to have a motherboard that supports an M2 slot, which most common newer motherboards will.
Okay.
But you also have to have one of the new Intel chipsets and a 7th generation Intel processor.
And what's the most recent computer that you could have purchased, just off the shelf? That
was early this year, late last year.
So
basically.
It's pretty much something very
brand new.
Yeah.
And therein lies one of the biggest problems I think about this, in that if you're saying to somebody, oh, you've got this computer that's 2 years old, 3 years old, and you didn't buy an SSD for it, turns out you can slide this thing in here, even if it's a 2-year-old system, something like that with an M2 slot. You can pop that in there, awesome. Or you can put a PCIe extension card, something. Yeah. But the reality of the situation is only the very newest computers are going to be able to use this at all. Which, if you're buying a computer with a 7th generation core processor, just we've been recommending for at least 6 months now, that you buy a computer with an SSD. At least get an SSD if you're going to get a data drive. You have to have it. It's so much faster. It's so much better.
Yeah.
Everything just works faster. It's one of those things where even a casual user will notice the difference in boot times and, you're saying, with load times. And for them, this is sort of a moot point. But I do think that there's value here for system builders. I think this is kind of the thing we're getting into where Intel is sort of pitching this as an enthusiast thing, that you're going to build a system, you're going to put in your Western Digital Black hard drive and your Enthusiast i5 and an Optane drive because you don't feel like managing your files between an SSD and a data drive. But really, it's for Dell and HP and Lenovo, because they can go grab those 5400 RPM drives they've got sitting on a shelf somewhere. They can throw it in a system. They can buy these things at a much cheaper cost than we get them at.
Right.
And that person can go home with their 1 terabyte computer with 1 terabyte of data, and when they get home and boot it up, it's going to boot up in 4 seconds, and they're going to feel great about it. They're not going to be immediately mad at their computer that they just bought because it just has a slow hard drive.
So they pay for this upgrade on it, and then boom.
I don't even think they'll pay for the upgrade. I don't even think they'll. I think that is the core. That is the core thing. Yeah, is that you won't even. It'll just say Dell 1 terabyte HDD plus Optane.
Okay.
That you'll see just a little note that says and it's got Optane memory.
Okay, okay, this is good, because I've got another question about that then, just why they're doing that. But just for everybody tuning in right now, if you're watching on YouTube and Facebook, we're talking about Intel Optane Memory and the consumer essentially the consumer version that's out now that you can purchase to upgrade your system as it would be. And so if you're doing this, so why would you even bother buying a hard drive and not just a solid state drive? I guess that's my confusion. This thing will only work with brand new systems. So you have to have the Core i7 is what you said?
You can have the 7th generation.
7th generation.
Any of them.
7th generation processor, so you can have any of those and put this on there.
Yeah, it's 7th generation only.
Yeah, it's all of them.
So pretty much brand
no
new
AMD
computers.
Ryzen, by the way.
No AMD Ryzen. So
which is definitely, I think, something that is going to, I mean, it's not a huge concern overall, but I think for enthusiasts and geeks, that's kind of one of those things where it's Intel's put out this new Optane memory, and it only works with the newest Intel processors. And I think a lot of geeks are going to kind of look at that and be like, come on. Because, like geeks are usually about like open hardware and open source and, letting things work with other things. And, this is very much locked down to the latest Intel stuff. So not winning any brownie points there, I don't think, from the enthusiast crowd.
Yeah. What are we looking at for price with this? I mean, because the price seemed to be, it's decent.
It's $44 for a 16 gig and $77 for the 32 gig.
Yeah. Okay.
And, we can pull it up right now. I'm sure you can get a 256 gigabyte SSD for right around the same price. Here's $71 for a 240 gigabyte SanDisk SSD. So that's, and that's just a regular SATA SSD. It's nothing fancy. But so that's sort of going to become your option, is that those budget systems are either going to have the 256 gig SSD or the 1 terabyte plus Optane. And now that 1 terabyte plus Optane, it isn't a bad choice.
Yeah.
Because before I would have told you absolutely buy the SSD. You don't need that much data, because I think people drastically overestimate how much local data they use.
Right.
I think most people could probably get by on a Chromebook with 16 or 32 gigs of memory total and not even...
Yeah, and especially with cloud storage now, you're not storing everything on your computer. You shouldn't store everything on your computer.
Well, yeah, and especially with streaming services too. Like people aren't storing music and movies and data the way they used to, and that's the only big data that people tend to use. So.
We've got I want to get to some of these questions here that are coming in. Let's see. Jackson says SSD is the only way. Why not enjoy near instant boot speeds? That's, I think, kind of Brad, where you're going with that.
Something the note that is of interest that we did not test ourselves, but that I saw tested at PC Perspective, is that you can actually pair Intel Optane with an SSD, and you can or cannot? Yeah, you can.
You can. Okay.
You can, and you do get a bit of a performance benefit from that.
Okay.
So, if you are interested in that is something that you could actually look into doing.
Is it a big percentage? Or are we talking about 10 milliseconds faster?
I think it's more of it's not a big percentage.
Okay.
Really, but it's in certain scenarios the SATA SSD with Optane can actually be quicker than an NVMe SSD. And NVMe SSDs are kind of considered they're the fastest thing around.
Yeah.
So that's definitely an interesting scenario. It could mean that your budget SATA SSD could be made very, very quick with a $88 or $77 Intel.
Right. Pretty nominal upgrade.
In some situations.
In some situations, it's not like it's slower in any situation.
Yeah.
And again, it's something where you're going to be shaving off a couple seconds usually.
Okay.
But
a couple seconds is a couple seconds.
But it's also that is a scenario where the low price is helpful. Okay. I think for a lot of enthusiasts, looking at something that's an $88 upgrade is probably that's almost like impulse buy territory. So
right.
Okay,
I've seen the questions start coming in right now for this, and I think we should get to that. Talking about gaming results. Ron's asking what sort of advantages might this have for online gamers. Gregory asks, gamers might find a real advantage if throughput is not dependent on cache. So, let's talk about gaming. Have we tested out any of this? Do we have some results on that?
Well,
sorry.
Maybe
I should phrase that question differently. Or?
The results are mixed.
Okay. Results are mixed.
Yeah. We tested 2 games in particular, Deus Ex, Mankind Divided, and Civilization 6. And in Deus Ex, there was no real difference between Optane and not using Optane. And Civilization 6, there was a very substantial difference in load times. The Optane drive needed 25 seconds on the first run, and the hard drive by itself needed 50 seconds.
Okay.
And in that case, the Optane drive retained an edge of about 7 seconds, even in successive load runs. So even after the system had some time to get that data about that game in memory, it still was quicker with the Optane drive by a noticeable amount.
Okay.
But
like I said, it's inconsistent. It's not something I would call a must-have.
And I think part of the thing here is that, because a lot of people play on HDDs and games have sort of been built with this idea of, your GPU memory is the fastest, then your regular memory, and then your hard drive, that you don't ever, as a game developer, want to go to the hard drive. You want to go to the hard drive as little as possible.
Yeah.
Because every time you do, it's a super slow action. You're waiting for files to load. So the only time you're actually reaching for data off a storage device is when you're loading the game the first time, or when you're loading a big area, things like that. Those are the times you're more likely to see, any kind of benefit. But if a game is well optimized, it's not ever trying to find those files anyway.
Yeah.
It's getting what it needs is loaded into the memory, and it's using that as much as it can. So you are going to get, maybe this could lead to more developers working for systems like that, where they could say, we can do different things because we have access to this sort of even faster memory, but that's so far down the road.
Yeah.
Well, and have
that, that right now, no game you play, Civ loaded faster. But
Which
it's not like
nice.
there's going to be. It's nice.
Yeah.
I think that that's the thing is Intel Optane. I think is actually it can be nice for gamers. Having that faster load time is nice. There's actually a lot of games that have kind of crappy load times these days. That's not that uncommon. So getting a fast hard drive that can tackle that's nice. I just think the issue is what Brad was saying earlier about the way that this is available to only new systems. It's if you have a high-end gaming system that can use Optane, I feel like the chances are pretty good you already have an SSD, in which case this probably is not as attractive of an upgrade.
And if you don't, what are you doing?
Yeah,
seriously, that's how I feel about it. Is if you have a system where you're going to be playing games on it, even if you bought a pre-built system and it has a 7th generation Intel processor, or even a 6th generation Intel processor, that computer should have an SSD, no question. Of some sort in it, and I think that's the issue.
If you're planning on gaming, don't go.
Yeah, that everyone puts so much time and effort into making SSDs just completely ubiquitous and necessary for high-end computing, that this feels like it's sort of, this would have been a nice way to bridge the gap. But now it's sort of
on an older system.
The pricing is so aggressive on SSDs now on those 2.5-inch guys. That's just it's hard to justify this.
Yeah.
Unless and sort of the appeal that they've stated is that you don't have to manage your files. It does everything for you. Let me tell you, it's not that hard. It really isn't.
It's not in now we live in an era where Steam can split your library between multiple hard drives, for instance.
Right.
That's the only thing you really
which
need to
happened
worry about.
I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years ago. It's been like that for a while. So. The appeal to gamers is very limited. Again, it's that scenario where if you have a hard drive and a gaming machine and it can take Optane, if it is compatible, then sure. Sure. I just it's not really clear when that is happening, especially because as Brad said,
as Intel said, Brad tell.
The prices on the SSDs are not that expensive right now. $150 will get you a 500 gigabyte solid state drive, SATA solid state drive. Not the best one, but
still
it doesn't really matter. The cheap ones are fine for the purposes of gaming. So
and just for reference, the 1 terabyte Western Digital Black is $68 on Amazon. And then plus,
right, exactly.
$44 or $70 for the Optane.
So
you're well into the territory of a nice SSD.
Yeah.
You could spend $100 or more and get yourself an 850 Evo or a 950 Evo, something a little better.
So the bottom line is, why not just go for an SSD if you're going to be doing that? I guess, and I do want to get any other questions too that people have. You have specific ones about this Intel Optane Memory or some observations. I will get those here into it. But I guess that's the bottom line. Who should upgrade with this? Who should get this?
I don't think anybody.
Unless you made the mistake.
Anybody sitting there right now with a desktop is going to be going out to Best Buy tomorrow to buy one of these. I don't see that happening. I think a lot of new systems are going to include them. I don't think a lot of the upgrade idea I think is a little preposterous.
Yeah. You should buy it if you have a new computer with a hard disk that can take an M.2 slot upgrade. Which it's just you should definitely buy it in that scenario. It's just it's such a limited use case that it's just kind of okay. I'm sure there's some people out there that have that situation, but there's just not very many of them.
Right. That's not going to be a huge market for that.
So it's we gave it a 6 out of 10, or a 3 out of 5 star review on the site, and basically, it's not bad. It does what it says it would do.
Uh-huh.
It does it quite well. I think there's a lot of potential here. but it's just hard to see, who's actually going to be upgrading to it.
Yeah. It just sounds like it's a product for which there's not a market for.
And by the way, you could actually get, for the same price as a 32 gigabyte Optane drive, if you have that M2 slot, you can get the Corsair Force MP500, which is a 120 gigabyte M2 drive SSD for $85. So, and you can get an even better deal if you go towards like a more generic brand. So, you also have that option. If you have that M2 slot, I would say, hey, if you really want more data at a faster rate, that's a really good way to do it too. It's maybe a little more involved, but
yeah. Do you think this is something, using this technology down the line, there's going to be more uses for it?
Intel has said that there will be consumer SSDs based on this technology sometime later.
Consumer Optane
and I think
SSDs.
That's going to be something that's much more of interest. I think we thought SATA SSDs were really fast, and people have really taken to those NVMe drives, despite sort of, again, you sort of are running into this point of like, what am I using this data for? Why am I needing to load it so fast? But those drives, despite being crazy expensive, have done really well. So
yeah,
I'm feeling people want faster data.
Yeah,
They'll pay for it.
A small handful of sites have gone and tested the server version of Optane, that drive, and it performs really, really well. It's extremely quick. So when that drive, sort of heads towards the consumer market, whatever the
down.
sort of variation, I don't know what the size is going to be or what the pricing is going to be. It's probably going to be expensive. It's probably not going to be something around the gate that everyone's going to be able to afford, but it should be really impressive. And what's really going to be impressive is if we get to the point where you can use that drive, in lieu of RAM. That's when
skip that altogether.
Yeah, that's when things get really nice. Because besides it just simplifying the system, that would also actually have some really nice benefits for laptops and system size, and just getting, if you could have one storage solution that took the place of RAM and long-term storage, it would
marry it all together.
And that is the kind of thing that would drive development towards new types of programs that can access a lot of data very quickly and read and write very quickly. That sort of unified structure might bring about the kind of change.
But that's probably not going to happen for a while, because aside from this,
Mm-hmm.
pricing, there's also the whole issue of legacy apps and how are apps going to use this new memory solution. Is there are there bugs that they need to worry about? How do the drivers interact with it? So
we're a ways away.
A change like that would not happen overnight, even if the technology comes out at an affordable price point immediately.
Yeah,
there would be some transition period there.
So, but maybe down the line, though, this could be something. But the bottom line, this full review, by the way, is at digitaltrends.com as well. You can read Matt's review right there. Your final kind of recommendation is,
if you are eligible to use it, like I said earlier, if you have a hard drive and you have a new system that can accept Optane, then it's a good option to speed up your entire system. But I just there's not a
huge market for it.
That'll be true.
If you bought a Lenovo desktop with just a hard drive in the last 3 hours, then maybe
return
this is
it,
for
but
you.
If you can't,
if you can't return it and swap it out for something, you're almost at that point, I think, where these systems are 7 generations are in kind of lower end systems that you might be able to get away with in the last 30 days, just return it and buy one. I think that's true. There are very few people who will do this, but I do think within a year or two, a lot of people are going to be using Optane and not knowing it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's fascinating to know about this. And again, this review is at digitaltrends.com. So if you have any more questions or comments or anything that you want to know about it, go there, read the review. I'm sure you can leave a comment on there, and Matt can probably get back to you or answer any questions that are left unanswered from that. I do want to say this, too. So this is Close to the Metal. This is our weekly computing podcast, and we do this every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time live on Facebook and YouTube, and it's awesome to have everybody join us. But we do have an audio version available, too. So go to iTunes, subscribe to the audio version. We've got lots of back episodes. You can check them all out there. Each week we tackle one specific issue and kind of go in depth on it. And we appreciate everybody tuning in and listening to this. So again, thanks everybody. Send us an email, podcast@digitaltrends.com. I think that's about it. Any final comments on Intel Optane Memory?
Nope.
Okay, well, very, very well put and very succinct. All right, there we go. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll be back next week with another episode.